Okay, so for the next two assignments I'll cover in this one video. The first one, the coloring assignment, these two files are the same. It's just a matter of this one is easier to get to because you can right click and save link as. And it's just going to save here we go, a JPEG. And this JPEG has 8 different, or 9, excuse me, different illustrations. And for those of you who are really, new to Illustrator, you may want to just kind of make these illustrations exactly as they are. If you're more comfortable with Illustrator and you're kind of like bored a little bit, then use these as a jumping off point and kind of make your own thing. The idea here is if we look closely, there we go. Underneath them, it kind of explains how you might create some of these things. So this isn't for different, donuts, which would be hard to do. It's actually just 2 different circles. And each circle has a really thick outside stroke, and then there's the inside part, and then there's another circle with both the stroke and the fill. And so that's how you get the double colors. And it looks like 4 different rings, but it's actually just 2 circles, right? So that's what this is about. It's about seeing how you can draw things that are it's a lot simpler to do than you would think just to look at them. So it's about finding those solutions. This one's about copying and pasting. Here you can use the pen tool. Sorry. With some of these other drawings, you can see, if you look at the line version, you can see how it's just overlapping pieces. So no one drew like this one thing as one piece. That's too much. Even the windows, look at the windows. It's a square with a circle. Why can you do that? Well, there's no outline for these pieces. So that's something to keep in mind. And when I bring up Illustrator, so you're going to need to start a new file for this one. There is no Illustrator file for this one. There we go. So I'm just defaulting to this. I'm going to change it later. I'll show you how. But let's say I want to do the one with the circles, right? So I grab the Ellipse Tool, and in order to draw a circle, I just hold down Shift, right? And the default is black with white, boring, boring, boring. So I'm going to bring up the size of this a little bit, and I'm going to change the colors. Just choosing some silly things here. There we go. So let's say, I believe the fancy term the instructions use is concentric circles, meaning they all kind of have the same center. So what I can do to get that is Control C to copy. Control Shift V will place another copy of this directly on top of that one. Now, if I try to just resize this, I accidentally do this. And if I hold down Shift to resize it, it resizes it towards the opposite corner. But if you hold down Shift and Alt at the same time that you are resizing it, it does that. And it will resize it to, there we go, to the center. And so I can copy and paste again and get another, there we go, circle in there. And, I could do that till I had no space left. The smaller it gets, the harder it is to control, which means I have to zoom in, because every little mouse move I make is like, giant wave in a tiny ocean. There we go. So it's not exactly what the illustration was that I was looking at, but it's interesting and it's along the same lines. So this illustration, where'd it go? There we go. Has 4 different sets of circles, and they're all kind of different sizes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, I drag select, meaning I click on one side and kind of drag across the whole thing. And I can copy and paste that whole thing. And then I can change these colors. That's kind of ugly, but whatever. I can change the colors, can rearrange them, make them a little bit smaller. Now, when I make it a little bit smaller, you'll notice that the inside area, the sort of green area, kind of vanishes. Remember that this line width that we're using here, that's absolute. So it doesn't matter if when I scale it, that line width isn't going to scale with. It's only going to scale the size of the path. So I have to knock it down a couple notches to make them look similar. There we go. So it kind of has the same balance of one color and the other color. Pardon me. But I can copy that again. Actually, I don't want to do that because I'm kind of sliding through my color scheme. So I'm going to do that. So I'm just kind of sliding each color a little bit, keeping the same saturation and lightness points for each of them. There we go. So something like that. You know, have fun like this. So let's say I get to the end of this. Oh, missed one. So you gotta be careful when you're copying and pasting. There we go. So I get to the end of this. Let's say I love it. It's perfect. Never changed. But obviously I've got this like huge background area compared to the original. You can change the size of your artboard. The white space that you are working in, your actual workspace, is called the artboard. And there's this tool over here called the Artboard Tool. And it looks like crop marks. And it's not wrong. And when I click on it, what it does is it activates what kind of looks like the crop tool in Photoshop, except you can always come back out this way, right? You can always make more space. And there we go. Something like that. You can also kind of click on it and move the whole thing around if you want to. And you go back out to any other tool, and it takes you out of that mode. And I'm going to move these over just a little bit. There. And there you have it. So, oh, one last step. If you want this background changed, really the right way to do it is to actually, wait, there we go. Change, like to actually put something back there. Right? So there's no, get rid of that. There we go. And I'll put it in the back, right? I'm using my layers to drag it to the background. There we go. So there is no background color. White just means nothing. Especially in the print world, it's just going to print nothing. So, if you want there to be a color back there, you don't put in. There's no background setting. It's just you put something in the background and call it a day. All right. So I want you to choose 4 of these to base something off of, and you can keep them simple. They don't have to. These are relatively simple. They're, they look intimidating at first. The point here is to be looking at something and figuring out how to draw it. So before you had your pen tool assignments and you could actually see where the anchor points were and you could see, what tool to use. You could kind of, it was telling you. Here you kind of have to figure it out a little bit. You can look at this and you can tell where the pen tool should go right on the corners. But on this one, it gets a little bit more complicated. And, you can use squares and circles and ellipses to build some of it. But this steeple could probably use a pen tool, right? So we're breaking you free a little bit of exercises that tell you exactly what to do. It tells you a little bit. It says windows are formed with circle segments and pen lines constrained to the horizontal and vertical. So, meaning these lines here. And the windows are rectangles or rectangles and circles grouped together. So that's what they're talking about with these top ones. It's a circle and a rectangle simply piled on top of each other. All right. So choose the 4 that you are most interested with and go from there. And you can keep them all. Can always add a new artboard, so you can put 4 of them in a row on here. If I go near my layers, it says artboards. If I click, it makes a new artboard, and it makes it the same size as the old one. You can always change it. So whichever artboard you're on, that's the one where you can change, you can move them around, you can kind of do whatever you want. All right, I'm going to save that. Should have saved it earlier. I've got to get better at that. Because it's new, I didn't make it before anywhere. I have to actually choose a place to save it. So I'm going to say save. By the way, for those of you who work at home, if you're moving from the school to your house and your house has less up-to-date software, then you would set which Illustrator file type you want it to be. As long as you're not doing anything too complicated, it probably shouldn't matter.